I'm just like, you know. So,
Yeah, that's why you gotta respect other people. But
yeah.
shoot, man. So I'm recording. For some reason, it said it stopped recording. I hope it's not my internet. But let me know if there's internet connection issues.
Yeah.
Um,
It's going. I can see there's an icon in the corner that says recording, so we should be good.
cool, man. So how you doing, Bronthur,
What's
brother
up,
Nathan?
brother? I'm good. I mean, you being my brother, you're probably aware of a lot of my personal changes that I'm going through and stuff, which I probably won't talk about in the podcast. But all things considered, I'm really good. You know, there's a lot of change. So I mean, that's comforting in a sense. You know, is that I'm not the only one experiencing it, not by a long shot. You know, a lot of decay, a lot of reformation, a lot of things shutting down. Um, but
Yep.
I feel really, really, really great. So long as I am sure to take care of my personal well-being and health, and you know, not give into the apathy. Uh, but yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, it's easy to just look at the world right now and just feel really down about it. But I've been telling people, it's like, look, I am actually really optimistic about the future, even though shit is just really taking a turn downwards. I'm still like, I'm keeping my chin up, and I'm not even trying. I'm not even putting that fake smile on. It's just because I'm optimistic about the things I still want to accomplish in my life, and I have goals to work towards. And if anybody is watching this and you don't have friends around you that have goals and that push you to be a better person than you were yesterday, then you should start being. I think you should start being more choosy about the people you spend time with. Because if you are hanging around people who are completely victim mentality, where the world is against them and they have no power to change their situation at all, that's only going to rub off on you. If anyone has heard of the average of five, I've told you about the average of five, but you're the average of the five people you hang out with most.
Mm.
So make sure that those five people are pushing you to be a better person and uh, pushing you towards self-realization.
Yeah, I think I mean, we've talked about that at length for years, probably for, you know, over 5, 6 years, you know, that sort of conscious rule of five. And I think specifically watching you implement that into your life, I think that pretty single-handedly led to a lot of your personal productivity in pursuing projects that you care about, um, rather than devoting disproportionate amounts of time to either hobbies or interests that don't serve your personal growth. You know, I'm been trying to strike a balance between that. You know,
It's a constant struggle.
I don't think it necessarily needs to be a struggle. You know what I mean? I've kind of stopped self-flagellating myself for playing video games every now and again. I just need to be sure to compartmentalize it to like little points in time where I'm like, okay, now's a good time to like put an hour in on some shit, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and you know, it's funny you mentioned the victim mentality. I was going for a jog earlier today and was thinking about that exact same thing you're talking about, of the victim mentality and people that operate from their default point of that victim mentality. And my experience with it, the people that I know, is being on the outside looking in, and at risk of this sounding kind of condescending, it feels as though they're not even aware most of the time that that's like the space that they're operating. That's their mental workspace, is that of like, I have no control over what's happening and the world is inherently evil. And the analogy that came to mind is like, it's almost like it's as if you're like a rag doll caught in a typhoon of your own like self perpetuated delusions of like powerlessness. And you know, you're the only one that can stop that storm, because you're the one that designed it, you know.
And I'm glad you're bringing up this water storm analogy, because I always use this analogy. It's like we can either be caught in the waves of life, or you can swim in the direction that you're trying to go towards. And the
Mm.
victim mentality is just like, oh my god, the waves, the current, it's so hard to swim against it. Like, I'm just going to conserve my energy and sit still, which ironically is what you should do if you're trapped in physical water, like real water. You want
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you actually do want to save your energy and just float for a bit. But
Yeah.
in the waters of life, you got to swim in the direction you're trying to go. You can't just let there and sit there and bob and then complain about the state of your life if you're not actually trying to make a concerted effort to swim in the direction you want. So I like that you bring up the water storm analogy, because it's so easy to just get caught up in that and be like, well, I just, people who are working entry-level jobs, they're just like, I just need the minimum wage to go up and my life would be better. It's like, no, don't wait on the government or other people to fix your situation. Like, get creative and think about what you actually want to do in life before you die. Like, that sounds morbid to some people, but I always remind myself every single day, like, I'm going to die one day. And if I look back on what I did today on my deathbed, I'm going to be super disappointed if, I haven't done anything, if I haven't done anything that day that is pushing me towards my goals. I think about it all the time, and I think it's a healthy reminder. It's not morbid to me. I've met some people who are just like, how can you bring about death or talk about death like that so casually? I'm like, you haven't reconciled your mortality. You don't like do that every day.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's like, the older I get, the more I see how imperative that, like, I feel like that confrontation of your own mortality sort of catalyzes the majority of people's um compulsions to either reorganize or restructure their life or start fresh or make changes for the better. um even people who maybe aren't aware of the fact that that's at the end of the day, like, I have a life, I'm living it. Am I happy right now? And if the answer is no, then it's like, well, fucking do something. It doesn't get much more complicated or woo than that. It's just
Right.
about taking action. And I think once you, as an individual, regularly start to employ that into your life and that self-empowerment, it's hard to forget that you can do it if you've found even minimal success of putting that into practice. And by extension, it becomes a lot easier to recognize in other people who haven't had that realization yet, who haven't sort of hit that preliminary hurdle of being like, oh, I can do things if I
Yeah.
decide to do them.
It's a mentality. It's a mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. My only hope is that, in a post-COVID world, inordinate amounts of people who have not really taken that to heart or taken that sentiment seriously have had no other choice but to arrive there. I think this thing has forced a lot of people there. And some people have gone kicking and screaming, and some people who are very sleepy, who are very numb, I recognize a lot of those people as the ones that are very annoyed by the state of things. Oh, I just want everything to go back to normal.
I know.
I miss my normal. And it's okay to miss your normal, but it's like, I mean, our father threw away the VHS of Power Rangers, the movie, which was my favorite movie growing up. And he threw it away because I liked it too much. And if I'm sitting here almost 26 years old, still upset that my VHS got thrown away, that would have likely prevented me from enjoying anything else in this world or finding new interests or,
Yeah.
getting into other shit if I didn't eventually get over that. It's a weird analogy, but
What an analogy. That was just like some deep-seated, you might actually still be a little salty about that.
I'm pretty salty about it, to be honest with you.
Okay. So we've kind of vaguely talked about the state of the world. COVID was mentioned. Things are
Got that out of the
changing.
way. That obligatory sentiment out of the way.
Yeah, because the conversations I've been having with other people is just, even though I want to keep this kind of like a mushroomy type podcast, it's just, you got to address the current events. So that's what I've been doing. But speaking of mushrooms, because I want to bring it back to mushrooms, I know you've been microdosing for a few months / macrodosing here and there, and I've tried microdosing, not like very well. Like basically, I think I found like the amount that I like to take, which is about zero point 0.1 dried grams of the psilocybin caerulescens, the wili mushrooms from Georgia, and I tried to implement Paul Stamets's lion's mane. I had some lion's mane supplements, as well as the niacin vitamin B12 supplements. But apparently, for the correct use of it, it's got to be the kind of niacin that flushes. So you'll get a flush if you've ever taken niacin, where you'll get red kind of in places, and I don't know what the flush is doing. I think it's your blood is just moving faster or something, but it's supposed to be niacin plus lion's mane in certain amounts, plus the psilocybin if you're feeling jazzy. And that's supposed to encourage neurogenesis, which is the growth of your nerve endings and in your body, as well as your brain nerve endings.
And you were trying that?
I was trying that for a little bit, but again, I don't think I was using the niacin correctly. I think you're supposed to wait for the flush and then take some more supplements or whatever. So I still have to actually try to execute that correctly. But what I did notice from the psilocybin, if anything, was an energy boost, a boost in creativity, and yeah, I really like it. I would continue to do it if mushrooms were readily available. And yeah, so tell me your experiences with it, what you've been doing, and what you think is a good method, and yeah, just tell me about it.
Yeah, you mentioned microdosing. I actually I haven't microdosed in a long time.
Just macro, just 6
Yeah.
5 grams in silent darkness.
Haven't done that in a long time either. Over the past few months in COVID, I've gotten back into being interested in mushrooms. And I haven't gone over 2 grams since I've been trying. It's been like maybe 3 times in the past 2 months that I've eaten about 2 grams.
So you're really trying to get jazzy, like just enough to see some visuals and maybe feel a little giggly?
Well, it's
Creative.
interesting. It's interesting you say that, because it's actually been a very, very long time since I've had like the traditional classical distortion of like tracers and a very definitive sort of like geometrical perfection in like all things. It's been a very, very long time since I've gotten there. Like it's been probably like at least 4 or 5 years since I've taken any entheogenic plant medicine that brought me to that level. And most recently, pretty intentionally, because again, I've just gone through a lot of changes like a lot of other people have, and have had sort of that like monastic lifestyle imposed on all of us, through quarantine. And in the same amount of time that I've been getting back into this, I've been addressing my own like relationship to alcohol and curbing back that like regularity. So, and I know anything over 2 grams in my own personal experience usually can constitute a confrontation with everything. You know what I mean? Like, so it's almost as if anything over that 3.5 threshold is like all bets are off, and it's that like imperative surrender is necessary. And I think the time will come very soon, but I have just been very reluctant to go back to there. I've kind of like building up. Like I thought to myself, I don't know if this is something that somebody practices regularly, of kind of like going up a gram each time and getting a little bit more comfortable with that space. Cause I've taken too much of things before. And while those specific experiences have fundamentally and radically changed my my consciousness, my perspective, my identity in a lot of ways, I don't fuck around with it anymore these days. You know what I mean? Like I know it's kind of a responsibility to go into that space, and I'm rolling the dice on reorganizing and reforming a lot of things within myself. So I really want to reserve that for a point in my life where I have like the default existential confidence to know that like I'm in a really great space. And I think I'm getting pretty close to that, but until I get there, you know, I'm probably going to keep it at the 2 grams every so often. Also, you know, when I was younger, when we were younger, um, I feel like to reach that threshold of the visuals and the sort of like intense sort of mystical things that can happen, especially being the age, you know, that I was when I started, which was a teenager, that was like the primary function of the mushroom that I was interested in, was like, oh, like I can see shit, or I can like get these crazy distortions and feel really crazy and laughy and giggly. Um, you know, that was, it's almost like the, what am I thinking of? That's like the clickbait almost of it, you know?
It is clickbait. It's clickbait.
Yeah, it's clickbait. It kind of like brings you in from there. And then at
But
that age,
it's a Trojan horse too. It's a Trojan horse.
oh yeah, there's a lot of things that come out of it, you know. But these days, I could honestly care less about, you know, waving my hand in front of my face and seeing the little trails and shit. I mean,
It's
it's
so
fun, but you know, I could care less at this point. What I'm most interested these days in is the aftermath of the next few days of integration, and challenging myself to sink into the discomfort of having, you know, a lot of my walls and my you know, the harder outer shell that we tend to like construct for ourselves, challenging myself to get more comfortable with that and who I really am. That's so much more interesting to me these days than like, you know, pink elephants and purple dragons or whatever the fuck the cliche is,
yeah.
you know.
So with along with that, the pink elephants thing, like these are partially left over from the era of propaganda. Like you can take LSD and mushrooms and see pink elephants, and also it burns holes in your brain, which is completely false. Uh, but it's taken away from what the mushroom and psychedelics can actually do for one's own psyche, spiritual development, personal confidence. And honestly, the newest thing that's being pushed is end of life relief, like for people who are terminal. I mean, Oregon is about to vote in November to, I've been telling Oregonians, because I can't vote yet, to vote yes on IP34 to legalize psilocybin-assisted therapy for end of life terminal patients. Basically, people who are. I mean, we're all afraid of death, and what psychedelics can show you and teach you is that there is way more to the psychic world and our world physically even than what our day-to-day consciousness can tell us or show us. Basically it can, I mean, I know you're aware of this, but yeah, there's more to existence and consciousness than what we're taught in schools, what we're led to believe. And yeah, so again, the propaganda, pink elephants. But yeah, that I also know, like our friend Vanessa, she can take mushrooms and just hang out with people, like at a
Mm-hmm.
party, and I won't even know she's on mushrooms, and I really don't. It's hard for me to understand that, because the way mushrooms affect me and my mind body is just like I get super spiritual, and I have to treat it with such care. Like it's a very important experience that I'm not just going to throw away into a regular like party environment or hang out
Mm-hmm.
environment. It's not like that to me at all. But I do realize, like Hamilton Morris called it pharmacological determinism. He says people believe in pharmacological determinism, which just means that this drug does this and this drug does this. But I'm sure you know people who can drink coffee and they get sleepy. I know a few
Mm-hmm.
people, and that's not me. But not every drug or substance affects everybody the same. So I also have to be aware of that. But what mushrooms can do for me, and I think the way you like to use them, is to build up your spiritual and existential strength. That's why I don't actually take mushrooms very often. I think the last time I actually tripped hard was last July, about a year ago. Um, funny enough, we were actually drinking gin. We
Not the
drank
boodles.
we drank that whole bottle, and then we were like, okay, we have these mushrooms. Let's just take a gram or so. And then I think we took even more than that. But yeah, honestly, I think this is the second time I had alcohol in my system and then consumed mushrooms and tripped really hard on a small amount. So I
Mhm.
don't know if it was just the drunkenness times the psychedelic trip, or
Mhm.
if the alcohol in my body actually just broke it down faster and just hit me harder. I still don't know, but
Yeah.
I'm not actually advising the combination of alcohol and mushrooms, because I think mushrooms are they're like a sacrament to me. They're special
Mhm.
and need to be treated with respect.
Well, hey, if I can interject really quick, if you don't
Yeah.
mind, I mean, I think one of the more recent talks that I heard uh, Kilindi Iyi give before he passed earlier this
I want
year.
to talk about him. I want to talk about him.
I always want to talk about him. But one of the last talks I listened to before he passed was um, he's still kind of like he'll go on this whole tangent of like this like very like sort of stoic mysticism sort of point of view, but then he'll like throw like a comic book reference out there and be like, man, you just gotta fucking do it. um but he was talking about how he was comparing like pretty much every other like substance. If you like to smoke weed, if you like to take pills, if you like to drink your alcohol, whatever drug you like to do is sort of like your vice or whatever, that sort of thing that you just like to do. Um, he's like, you're really not getting into it unless you're combining that with that mega high dose of psilocybin. If you're not going past the 5 grams, and he was dead ass serious, and
Okay. Yeah.
it sort of made me think like, the mushroom is just sort of like, or at least the psilocybin in that experience, like it is kind of welcoming sometimes to other like adjustments, whether it's your weed. I mean, I know that you smoke a little bit of weed after you think you peaked on like 3 grams, you're going right back to the peak, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yep.
Um and and every experience I've had drinking alcohol with psychedelics is like really helped combat the come up and the sort of like nervousness in a way, the discomfort. And what I think you can probably identify with is we react very similarly. We go very inward, and maybe it's because we're family, we have those similarities, introspective. I mean, but a lot of people are like that. um and
The anxiousness is a big one for me. So I have in the past, it's like if I'm going to take a little bit of shrooms, I kind of want a beer or two just to relax me for that come up.
mhm. Yeah, and I don't think it's necessarily sacrilegious or anything.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
really just down to preference. And I also wanted to touch on, you mentioning our friend and how she can handle just eating a couple grams casually, and you wouldn't even be able to tell. And like that's some people's wave too. In the past, I can admit from being like, oh, I only take my 5 grams in silent darkness. How dare you disrespect the mushroom in such a way? And like I'm just so over that at this point. I mean, they're there for us, and it's kind of up to us. It's up to any individual, whichever way you want to implement that. Just be responsible and don't hurt anybody, especially yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. So going back to Kalindi, I kind of just wanted to give, like, I've been wanting to do a video just on him, since I found out he passed away from COVID. And
Mm-hmm.
uh, I was gonna
Yeah,
make a
it's so
video, but I
sad.
might as well do it now. Yeah, it's hella sad that Kilindi Iyi was this African American. I think he's from Michigan. He was formerly known for his for bringing black martial arts,
Or
um,
African martial arts, rather, I believe.
African martial arts, and I had never heard about it until Kilindi Iyi. And looking into some history about it, it's kind of unclear of where it actually came from, because I think he makes some claims about how a lot of different martial arts are actually inspired from African martial arts. I'm not going to comment on the validity of those statements because I'm not actually sure. But yeah, he definitely taught black or African martial arts to people. And he's got some older YouTube videos before he started doing like psychedelia videos. But yeah, he was an African martial artist, and then he moved on to, well, he was doing both. I mean, he talked about the mushroom extensively, and actually talked about how certain martial arts are actually inspired from psychedelic taking and the consumption of plants and fungi of altered states of mind, and how those have contributed to the arisal of martial arts. But man, he was just live streaming on Facebook all the time, making tons of YouTube videos, going to conferences, talking about the psychedelic experience, talking about his experiences. And I've always thought of him as the neo Terence McKenna, because Terence McKenna made this claim about 5 dried grams in silent darkness, but Kilindi Iyi was taking tens of grams, and
I think like 30 was like the average, I think.
And
Yeah.
surrounding himself with particular crystals, saying that these were portals to the other worlds. Like, I mean, just as outlandish stuff as Terence McKenna was saying back in the 90s. You know, Terence McKenna was saying some kooky shit. Kilindi is saying some kooky shit. But I mean, he also talked about cryptocurrency, which I'm into. Some people might know. And he was even saying how Bitcoin would be a currency that transdimensional, intergalactic currency that aliens would recognize because it's based on math, not some like rock here like gold and precious metals. Like, that doesn't mean anything to a super advanced civilization, but a type of value that's based off of math, yeah, aliens would probably understand that. But I mean, I just want to respect this guy, because I started making some YouTube videos about 4 or 5 years ago, and when I learned about Kilindi, I really wanted him on my podcast. And some people might know that I put this project, like my mushroom blog and some podcasts, on hold for a couple years for personal reasons. But you know, this is what you get when you hesitate and you don't start swimming in the direction that you want to go. It gets too late, and in this case, COVID-19 has taken Kilindi's life, which is extremely sad. And he's not going to be able to be on my podcast physically. So, I mean, that's a kind of a regret of mine, but I also am just trying to acknowledge and respect Kilindi for what he was, which was a psychedelic advocate, you know, saying crazy shit in the face of people who would just call you crazy. You know, it takes bravery. It takes bravery to go around and talk the way he did. And I just want to acknowledge him and pay respects. Rest in peace, Kilindi. You have influenced me, and yeah, wish you didn't go so soon.
Yeah, it continues to influence me very much as well. And you know, you mentioned him like saying crazy shit. I thought one of the kind of maybe eerie is the word. One of the eeriest, most magnetic things about his like live streams on Facebook, and him just going deep on like futurist, like psychedelic landscapes, mega high doses, transdimensional crystal work while you're on the mega high doses, is that if you look into his eyes, there's a certain sincerity and stern like stability. Like, you know, he's not like fucking twitching, like talking about all this crazy shit, like Zapped. You know what I mean? He's grounded. He's about as grounded as you can be. And, you know, and I think that kind of confidence to discuss so many wild topics so openly, you know, that comes from a very devout practice to being a channel for that sort of thing. And a really interesting thing, I don't know if it's on the website that is still up following his passing. I think it's like kilindiiyi.com or some variation of that. Is that on the page, in big letters, I think somewhere on the main page, it says continue the work. And I think it has like links for like ways you can fund like some of the community that was around him. And
okay, cool.
You know,
I would like a link to that, because I do want to kind of post up some clips from this recording, and I'll definitely make a Kilindi clip. And I know I think I saw some of his family on Twitter who had some like donation fund going for people who wanted to contribute to his family. So I'm going to try to reach out to them and try to get a link too. Yeah.
Yeah, he was, you know, I think he was just a really humble, not very well-known leader and kind of pioneer in a lot of ways. I mean, hearing some of the work and the crowdfunding stuff he was doing. I mean, some of the months prior to his passing, he was talking about like private, not through like Patreon or like GoFundMe, like doing like a really kind of exclusive, very small crowdfunding of like $10,000 to procure rare crystals that he was claiming like these are Palantir stones. A Palantir being he gave the example of like Lord of the Rings when they have the stone that like Merry like opens up and puts his hand on, and then Sauron like finds out where they're at. That's a Palantir stone. I mean, it's a staple of like might and magic, high fantasy. But this motherfucker was acquiring them for real, like $10,000 like rare stones where there's like 2 of them of existence in the world. He's getting from them from some dealer in Africa.
Wow,
And
I didn't even know about this.
Yeah, man. And successfully crowdfunding that, and also crowdfunding the construction of like a chassis based on ancient technology to place the stone. So, and he was talking about it would have inscriptions that have, I think, he called it like the old practice. You know, this is not a chassis. That wasn't the word he used for it, but it's essentially like a chassis constructed and with inscriptions based on very, very, very ancient language. And I mean, he referred to these sorts of utilities as technologies, and very starkly, not even as a metaphor. Like these are literal technologies. And it's personally got me thinking a lot about the nature of crystals and stones, which I think is really easy for, you know, sort of skeptics or, you know, it's really easy for skeptics to look at that and be like, it's fucking rock, my guy. Like
it's a little woo. It's along the woo channels.
Well, the part that sells me on it is that all a stone is compressed earth, and that gemstones, the precious ones, they are unique products of thousands of millions years of mineral compression underground, deep underground. And you know, then, and I also didn't know up until a few years ago, because I wasn't a goddamn Boy Scout or anything, is that to get a precious stone, when you find it, it's just a weird looking rock. I didn't know that for the majority of my life. That when
like a geode.
Yeah, it's just, but they look weird. They look like a weird fucking rock. They look like a rare drop. You know what I mean? And then you break, and then you break it open, and it has this fucking. I mean, if you were a human being like several thousand years ago and you stumble across one of those, I'd be like, oh shit. You know, I've no reference point, you know, through culture or through art or books or movies to really like kind of sort of degradate the view of that. If I just had that baseline view of like, I can witness the elements in the earth, and I stumbled across something like that, I'd be like, what the fuck is this? This is some sort of alien shit. Yeah. And
like a dragon egg or something. That's what I would think. Just like a rock that's strangely more spherical than the rest of them, just looks different. Like, and then you crack it open and it's fucking shiny and colorful. Yeah, I wouldn't know what to fucking think.
Yeah, it's just a compression of elements that has been naturally refined into its own entity almost. And you know, Kilindi was somebody that would you know, purport these rare stones and transdimensional crystals. Ye Mingzhu crystal is a rare Chinese stone. It's like a brilliant green. That's one he would talk about, of like, you know, on 10, 20 plus gram doses of psilocybin, that at a certain point in your meditation, the crystal literally opens up. Like it opens up like a fucking, like Star Trek or some shit. You know what I mean? And yeah, man, he's totally fascinating. If I can put one more quick anecdote that's kind of like mysterious about him, is that if you see some of his early, he used to put out VHSs for the like African like martial arts stuff in like the 90s or something like that, or late 80s.
Yeah, they're on YouTube.
And I think some of those like VHSs were like, or maybe in the promotion of them, it was promoted that he had worked with Eddie Murphy, or Eddie Murphy had learned with him back when Eddie Murphy was gigantic around that same time that he was putting those out. Another thing about Eddie Murphy that's really interesting that I heard in a podcast, I believe with Neil Brennan, is that Eddie Murphy was like the youngest of like a big family, I think. And even when he was really young, the family all recognized like, okay, this kid's talented. And his mother was really had like a fortune teller, maybe not a fortune teller, it sounds really hokey, she was friends with a mystic of some kind. And she took Eddie to this mystic, and apparently the mystic was like, your son's destined to be gigantic. Like, your son's going to change the world. He's going to be either like a gigantic performer or something like that. Like, he's going to reach, his influence will reach many, many people. And from little things that I've heard, I've also heard that Eddie Murphy nowadays, he's very low key and he smokes a lot of weed all day, every day. So I don't know. I feel like there's just sort of like low key unspoken like mysticism surrounding him and his association with Kilindi, and hearing that reference about the fortune teller when he was young just sort of feels maybe as if Kilindi was just one stop on a very like kind of intense existential journey from Eddie Murphy. I imagine maybe Kilindi had taught him some stuff. It'd be really interesting to hear him talk about it one day if he ever does.
Yeah,
but
that would be interesting. That'd be very interesting.
Yeah, I think Kilindi's just a mysterious character, and he will be missed, but will also be remembered.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, rest in peace, Kilindi Iyi. So we talked about mushrooms. We talked about current events a little bit. Talked about Kilindi, which I really wanted to do. This has been about an hour or so. I guess you want to have some closing thoughts or anything else you want to talk about?
There's lots of things I want to talk about, but in relation to, I guess, yeah, I don't know. I appreciate you wanting to do this discussion. I find it really fitting too. The first time I ever ate mushrooms, I was actually with you. You didn't eat any mushrooms, but I tried to mow the front lawn. And as the first time I had taken mushrooms, I was probably like 16 or some shit like that.
What were we doing? What the fuck were we doing?
I don't know. I don't even know how I got them. I don't even remember. But I'd taken some mushrooms, and it was some chore that I had to do. It was my turn to mow the lawn. I tried mowing the lawn. It's a new lawnmower, and I think like it had been adjusted with the blade very low. And we have a hilly sort of situation.
I remember this.
Yeah, and it was way too low, so I'm like coming up. I remember I was listening to Earth, Wind, and Fire in my headphones, coming up hard, laughing my ass off, and the lawnmower is kicking up all this dust, and like it's just a giant plume of dust at this point.
I remember looking out the window and just seeing
like, what is he doing?
What the fuck?
But yeah, I have this very distinct memory of you intervening and being like, bro, I got this. Just chill out, And I remember it was like a summer day, and you had come out. You weren't wearing a shirt, and it was the first time that I'd noticed that like really bizarre organic symmetry. So I remember like looking at your chest and then just having this like it just looked insane. Like just like the shape and form of your torso. And I just remember having this like, not epiphany, but this just sort of like resounding feeling of like, dude, humans are fucking alien. Like there's just, this is an insane like achievement of technology or nature.
Yeah.
Like what is this thing? It's so symmetrical, and we have these arms that are usually like the same size, and there's a head in the middle. It's just it just seems so by design.
Yeah, but, you theists.
But yeah, I find it fitting that you wanted to do this discussion with me about mushrooms, and I just thought I'd share that little anecdote. It's
I yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's been it feels like forever ago, but it's been a real privilege to go from that sort of completely irresponsible and just sort of reckless relationship to it, and to now hopefully be having a discussion about its more spiritual utilities or responsible ways we can utilize them in our life. They're incredibly kind, I think, and they're there for us.
Yeah, I do believe they're there for us in the same way cannabis is. And cannabis, actually, most mammals have that endocannabinoid system where we have a central nervous system, and then there's another system alongside that responds to the cannabinoids found in lots of different plants, especially cannabis. And it keeps us healthy. It keeps our hormones regular, and people don't realize that it's an actual nutrient and antioxidant, and it's mostly good for us. Everyone's different, though. You have to keep in mind. But I mean, even the mushroom, non-toxic. You have to consume more than your body weight in it to actually have dangerous side effects. Which, I mean,
there's a lot.
try eating 150 pounds of anything. It's just not happening. So yeah, and I appreciate you talking about your experiences. I definitely wanted to talk about that. And yeah, we can do some more. I'm not finished listening to your podcast you did with Jason, but I'm really enjoying it. If anybody's curious, I'll probably tweet about it once you have the link up. That's not a Google Drive link, but it's really good. It's talking about the Black Lives Matter movement. He's talking with his fellow AT-alien, Jason, who is a person of color, and they have a very good conversation about what's going on with that. So,
yeah, it's the podcast isn't out yet. It's very close to being out. Maybe by the end of the month, possibly sooner. But it's called Human Resources Podcast. You can follow it at Human Resources Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and hopefully by the time that this comes out too, it'll be on all streaming services. We'll see if the algorithm fucks with me or not as far as copyright and things go. But yeah. That's where you can. Otherwise, you can find me at Nathaniel John Forsyth at Instagram, and you can find me on Facebook if you want. It's kind of a cesspool, so I don't really encourage you to go there. But find me on Instagram.
Yeah, and I'll include all of his links in wherever this is spit out: Twitter, YouTube, everywhere else. So thanks again, Nathan. I'm gonna let you go for now, and let's do another one sometime soon.
Yeah, man, it's been fun.
All right, you have a good day, Bromther.
All right, man. I'll see you. Love you.
See ya. Love you too.